My fiancée demanded I sign over 20% of my company to her parents within 7 days. She didn't expect me to cancel the wedding and send her the bill. 7 days. That is exactly how long Brooke gave me to decide whether I was a real man who loved her or a greedy narcissist who cared more about his bank account than his future family. The choice she laid out for me was not about picking a wedding cake flavor or deciding between the Maldives or Italy for our honeymoon. No, this was a gun to my head. The demand was simple, according to her. I had 1 week to sign over 20% of my fleet maintenance company to her father, a man who I knew for a fact could not manage a lemonade stand without bankrupting it. If I did not sign the papers by next Friday, the wedding was off. She was leaving and I would die alone with my money. As she so eloquently put it, I am Nathan, 34 years old. I did not inherit a dime. I did not have a safety net. I did not have some rich uncle who floated me startup cash or parents who co-signed loans for me. I built ironclad fleet services from the ground up, starting with one beat-up service truck and a maxed-out credit card when I was 22 years old. Now, 12 years later, we service and maintain commercial vehicle fleets across 3 states. We have contracts with shipping companies, bus lines, municipal vehicle departments, and private haulers who need their rigs running right. I have 200 employees who depend on me for their paychecks. I have contracts worth millions of dollars that took years to build. My hands are calloused from years of turning wrenches before I could afford to hire mechanics to do it for me. My back hurts when it rains from all those years crawling under trucks and shop bays, and I have more gray hairs than a man my age should have. But it is mine. Every single lift, every diagnostic machine, every service bay, every contract. It belongs to me because I earned it. The company started in my garage, literally my garage, attached to the duplex I was renting at the time. I was doing oil changes and brake jobs for local delivery trucks, working 18-hour days and eating ramen noodles for dinner because I could not afford anything else. I remember one winter where my heat got shut off because I put every dollar into buying a proper brake lathe instead of paying my gas bill. Slept in a sleeping bag for 2 weeks until I could make enough to get the heat turned back on. I used to do everything myself. Answer the phones, schedule the appointments, order the parts, do the actual repairs, send the invoices, chase down the payments. There were nights I slept on a cot in the shop because I had a truck that needed to be ready by 6 in the morning, and the job was not done yet. I missed holidays. I missed birthdays. I missed my own life for years because I was building something. My friends thought I was crazy. My family thought I was throwing my life away. My dad told me to get a real job at least 100 times during those first few years. He did not understand why I would give up a steady paycheck to gamble on some dream about fixing trucks. But I knew what I was building. I could see it even when nobody else could. The hardest part was the loneliness. When you are grinding 18 hours a day, you do not have time for relationships. You do not have time for friends. You do not have time for anything except the work. I watched my buddies from high school get married, have kids, buy houses. I was living in a studio apartment above a laundromat, eating canned soup for dinner and falling asleep with grease still under my fingernails. But I kept going. Every time I wanted to quit, I would think about what I was building. Not just a business, but a legacy. Something that was mine. Something nobody could take away from me. The first real turning point came when I landed a contract with a regional bus company. They had a fleet of 40 buses and their previous maintenance provider had been ripping them off for years. I underbid the competition by 30% and still made a profit because I was not padding invoices with phantom repairs. Word got around. More contracts came in. By year 5, I had moved out of my garage and into a proper shop with 4 service bays. By year 8, I had 3 locations. Now I have got 6 facilities across 3 states, a parts distribution warehouse, a mobile service fleet that can do roadside repairs, and a reputation in the industry as the company that does honest work at fair prices. I remember the day I signed the lease on that first real shop. It was a rundown building on the edge of an industrial park, surrounded by weeds and broken concrete. The previous tenant had been some kind of pallet recycling operation, and the place smelled like rotting wood, but it had high ceilings and roll-up doors and room for lifts. I stood in the middle of that empty space and I could see exactly what it was going to become. My dad came to the grand opening. First time he ever said he was proud of me. Took him 5 years, but he finally got it. He understood that I was not throwing my life away. I was building something real. And Brooke? Brooke was the woman I thought was my sanctuary from the war zone of business. We had been together for 2 years. She was 28, stunning, sharp, and came from a family that acted like royalty. Her father, Howard, and her mother, Patricia, carried themselves with a kind of stiff upper lip arrogance that usually screams old money. They drove leased luxury cars, wore designer clothes that were always a season old if you knew what to look for, and drank imported stuff that cost more than my first truck payment. I should have seen the signs earlier. The first time I met Howard, he spent 45 minutes asking me questions about my business. Not polite interest questions, but detailed questions about revenue and profit margins and contract structures. At the time, I thought he was just being thorough, a protective father making sure his daughter was not dating some deadbeat. Looking back, I realized he was sizing up the merchandise. I loved Brooke. I really did. She softened my rough edges, or at least she was good at pretending to. She knew how to make me feel like I was more than just a guy who fixed trucks for a living. She would dress up for our dates, plan these elaborate weekends away, and make me feel like I had finally made it. Like all those years of struggle had been worth it because I had earned a woman like her. But looking back, I realized I was just the mark, the big dumb workhorse who was going to pull their family carriage out of the mud. Every compliment she ever gave me was probably calculated. Every romantic gesture was an investment in her future payout. The ambush happened on a Tuesday night. I had just walked in the door smelling like diesel and exhaust after spending 12 hours at the main depot fixing a crisis. One of our mobile service trucks had broken down in the middle of a roadside repair job, which meant I had to drive out there myself, finish the customer repair, then figure out what was wrong with our own truck. Then one of my managers called in sick, and I had to cover his shift doing inspections on a fleet of delivery vans that had a deadline. I was exhausted. All I wanted was a shower and some food. Maybe fall asleep on the couch watching something mindless. Brooke was sitting at the dining table when I walked in. No dinner waiting, no greeting, just a thick manila envelope sitting in front of her like a centerpiece. Her posture was formal, almost rigid, like she had been rehearsing this moment. "We need to talk, Nathan," she said. Her voice was ice cold. Not angry, just business. Like she was conducting a meeting. I dropped my keys on the counter and kicked off my work boots. My feet ached and I could feel the grime from the day coating my skin. "Can it wait?" I asked. I just lost 2 hours because a mobile unit threw a serpentine belt on the highway and had to rerun a job myself. I am beat. "No, it cannot wait," she said, tapping a perfectly manicured nail on the envelope. "This is about our future. My parents came over today while you were at work." I groaned internally. Howard and Patricia. Great. The last time they visited, Howard spent an hour telling me about some guaranteed investment opportunity that turned out to be some kind of sketchy crypto scheme. The guy had all the financial sense of a lemming, heading toward a cliff. "What do they want?" I asked, walking toward the fridge. "Another loan for the country club dues?" I was half joking. I had already lent them $5,000 a few months ago to cover what they claimed was a temporary cash flow issue. I knew I would never see that money again. I had written it off in my head the moment I handed over the check. "Stop being disrespectful," Brooke snapped. Her voice had an edge to it I had not heard before. "They are worried about me, about us. They think it is unfair that I am coming into this marriage with nothing to my name while you hold all the assets. They want security." I turned around slowly. "Security?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Brooke, you are marrying a man who owns a company that nets 7 figures a year. You are getting a prenup that guarantees you a very comfortable payout if things go south. A prenup, by the way, that I barely wanted to sign but did because you asked me to. You have security." She pushed the envelope toward me across the table. "That is not enough. Open it." I walked over and picked up the envelope. It felt heavy in my hands. Heavier than paper should feel. I ripped it open and pulled out a stack of legal documents. The top page had a law firm letterhead I did not recognize. It was a transfer of equity agreement. The document outlined the transfer of 20% of Ironclad Fleet Services, structured as non-voting shares, to Howard and Patricia Whitmore. The transfer would become effective immediately upon the signing of our marriage license. I stared at the paper. The words did not make sense at first. It was like reading a joke written in legalese. My brain kept rejecting what my eyes were seeing. "Is this a prank?" I asked, looking up at her. "Are your parents messing with me?" "No," she said, standing up from the table. She smoothed her skirt and looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, almost predatory. "It is an insurance policy. My father says that business is volatile. Companies fail all the time. If something happens to you, or if you decide to trade me in for a younger model in 10 years, my family needs to be protected. They raised me. They invested in me. They sacrificed for me. They deserve a return on that investment." I felt the blood drain from my face. Then it rushed back in, hot and violent. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady. "A return on investment," I repeated slowly. "You are talking like you are a stock I bought. You are my fiancée, Brooke, not a business transaction. Not a racehorse I am betting on." "Do not be crude," she said, waving her hand dismissively, like I was being unreasonable. It makes perfect sense if you think about it logically. You built this company, yes, but you built it alone. Now we are going to be a team. My parents have connection. Daddy knows people in city government. He has friends on the transportation board. He could help you expand into municipal contracts, maybe double your revenue in 5 years. This 20% is just a gesture of good faith. Think of it as a dowry in reverse. A dowry, I repeated. I threw the papers back onto the table. They slid across the polished wood and scattered onto the floor. Some of the pages separated and fanned out across the hardwood. Brooke, are you hearing yourself? I asked. You want me to give away 1/5 of my life's work to your father? The same guy who tried to sell me a guaranteed crypto scheme at Thanksgiving? The guy who has never held a real job as long as I have known him? He is a gambler, Brooke. He is incompetent. I would not hire him to sweep my warehouse floors, let alone let him own a piece of my company. Her eyes narrowed. The softness I had fallen in love with was gone. What I saw underneath was something hard and calculating. Be careful, Nathan. That is my father you are talking about. I do not care who he is, I said, my patience finally snapping. This is my company. Mine. I bled for this. I missed my own brother's funeral because I was keeping this company from going under during the recession. I slept in my shop for months. I ate garbage. I worked until my hands cracked and bled. I am not handing over 20% to anyone. Not to your dad, not to the president, not to you. Brooke did not flinch. She did not raise her voice. She just crossed her arms and delivered the line that ended us, though I did not fully realize it in that moment. Then we have a problem. Because I am not marrying a man who does not trust my family. If you do not sign that paper by next Friday, 1 week from today, I am packing my bags. I will not marry a selfish man. She turned and walked out of the room, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She left me standing there in my dirty work clothes, the contract pages scattered on the floor around my feet like confetti from the worst party ever thrown. I did not sleep that night. I went to the guest room and lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. My mind was racing through every interaction I had ever had with Brooke and her parents, re-examining everything through this new lens. The next morning, I did not go to work. I called my operations manager and told him I was dealing with a personal emergency. Then I called Leah. Leah is not just a lawyer. She is a shark in a pantsuit. We went to college together before I dropped out to start the business, and she went on to law school. She graduated top of her class and spent 10 years at a big firm before going independent. She has been my legal counsel since year 3 of Ironclad. She negotiated my biggest contracts. She handled a lawsuit from a former employee who tried to claim I owed him equity for suggesting we expand to a second location. She won that case in about 45 minutes. I drove to her office downtown, a sleek space on the 14th floor of a building I probably could not afford to rent a closet in. Her assistant waved me through, and I found Leah at her desk, reviewing documents with her reading glasses perched on her nose. I threw the crumpled contract on her glass desk without saying hello. Read this, I said, and tell me if I can legally set fire to it. Leah picked up the papers, smoothed them out, and put on her glasses. She scanned the document for about 30 seconds. Then she let out a low, sharp whistle. Wow, she said, looking up at me over the rim of her glasses. Nathan, this is not just a transfer of shares. Did you read the whole thing? I got about 2 pages in before I wanted to punch a wall. Look at Clause 4, she said, flipping to a page and sliding it toward me. I picked it up and read. The legal language was dense, but Leah translated. Clause 4 grants the minority shareholders, meaning her parents, audit rights, and the ability to veto any expenditure over $10,000, she explained. Nathan, if you signed this, they would not just own 20% of the profits. They would control your checkbook. You would not be able to buy a new diagnostic machine without asking Daddy for permission. My stomach turned. I sat down heavily in the chair across from her desk. They want control. They want to gut you, Leah corrected. She leaned back in her chair. I did a little digging on Howard Whitmore last week, actually. A friend of mine in commercial real estate mentioned his name. What did you find? Did you know he is being sued by 2 separate contractors for unpaid renovations on their summer home? And he is 3 months behind on his primary mortgage. The bank has already sent preliminary foreclosure notices. Everything clicked into place. The old money arrogance. The vague answers about what Howard actually did for a living these days. The way they always seemed to be spending money they did not have. The designer clothes that were always slightly out of season. The leased cars that seemed to get downgraded every year. They were not protecting Brooke. They were broke. They were drowning. And I was the life raft. They did not want a partnership. They wanted a host to feed on. They are broke, I whispered. Destitute, Leah confirmed, living on fumes and credit cards, and whatever they can grift from people who do not know better. This is not a wedding gift request, Nathan. This is a hostile takeover disguised as a marriage vow. Brooke is the Trojan horse. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. It was not the hot, explosive anger from the night before. This was different. This was the cold, calculating focus I used when I was negotiating a multi-million-dollar fleet contract. When I was deciding whether to take a risk on a new location or walk away from a deal that smelled wrong. I stopped seeing Brooke as the woman I loved and started seeing her as a liability, a bad investment, a risk I needed to mitigate. What do I do? I asked. Leah smiled, and it was not a nice smile. It was the smile she had right before she destroyed opposing counsel in a courtroom. She gave you a deadline, right? 7 days? Yeah. Next Friday. Good. Use them. Do not break up with her yet. Let them think you are considering it. If they think they have you on the hook, they will get sloppy. They will say things they should not say. I want you to get them on record admitting why they really want the shares. Why? Because if you just dump her now, she will spin the narrative, Leah explained. She will tell everyone you are abusive, controlling, or cheating. I have seen it 100 times. The person who speaks first controls the story. We need ammunition before you pull the trigger. I went home that night and played the role of the beaten man. I told Brooke I was thinking about it. I told her that 20% was a lot, but I loved her and I wanted to make this work. I said I needed to understand the arrangement better before I could commit. She ate it up. Her demeanor changed instantly. She went from ice queen back to loving fiancé. She touched my arm, kissed my neck, told me she knew I would do the right thing. She said her parents just wanted what was best for us, for our future family. It made my skin crawl. Every touch felt calculated. Every smile felt like a mask. 2 days later, on Thursday, her parents invited us over for dinner. To celebrate the understanding, Brooke said, I knew what it really was. A victory lap. They thought they had won. I wore a wire. Well, not a wire like in the movie, but I had my phone recording in my front shirt pocket, the microphone facing out. Leah had walked me through the state laws on recording. We were in a one-party consent state, which meant I could legally record any conversation I was a part of without telling the other parties. The dinner was lavish, expensive cuts of meat, fancy side dishes, crystal glasses that probably cost more than my first set of socket wrenches. They were spending money they did not have to seal the deal, celebrating a payday that was never going to come. Patricia had outdone herself with the presentation. Fresh flowers on the table, cloth napkins, the whole 9 yards. It felt like a performance, like they were showing me what my money could buy them. After dessert, Howard leaned back in his chair with a satisfied expression. He pulled out a cigar and made a show of lighting it. I am glad you are seeing reason, Nathan, he said, puffing smoke toward the ceiling. You know, this business of yours? It is impressive, really impressive, but it needs guidance, experienced guidance. With my experience and connections, we could really expand this thing. Maybe get into government contracts. I have friends at the State Transportation Department. I know people who make decisions about municipal fleet maintenance contracts. I kept my expression neutral. That sounds promising, Howard, I said, forcing a smile. But 20%. That is a big chunk of the company. Are you sure you can handle the liability? If the company ever got sued, you would be on the hook too as an equity holder. Howard laughed, waving his hand dismissively. Oh, do not worry about that. That is why we structured the shares in a trust. Asset protection. Brooke explained it to you, right? She did. I lied. But tell me something, Howard. Why now? Why is it so urgent that we do this before the wedding? Why not wait until after we are married and do a proper arrangement then? Howard exchanged a look with Patricia, a nervous look, the kind of look people exchange when they are caught off guard by a question they should have anticipated. Well, Patricia chimed in, her voice a little too bright. We just want to make sure Brooke is settled. You know how volatile business can be. Markets crash. Companies fail. We just want stability for our daughter. Stability, I repeated. I paused, letting the silence stretch out. Is it true, Howard, that you are 3 months behind on your mortgage? The room went dead silent. You could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, the clink of ice settling in a glass. Howard's face turned a violent shade of red. His cigar hand trembled slightly. Who told you that? It does not matter, I said, leaning forward and placing my hands on the table. Is it true? Is this 20% about Brooke's security? Or is it about you needing a cash cow because you have run out of other options? Because from where I am sitting, this looks a lot less like protecting your daughter, and a lot more like a desperate grab for money you have not earned. Brooke slammed her hand on the table, making the silverware jump. Nathan, stop it. How dare you investigate my parents? How dare you question their intentions? I dare because you asked for 20% of my life, I snapped, dropping the act completely. I turned back to Howard. I know about the lawsuits, Howard. I know about the unpaid contractors who did work on your summer home and never saw a dime. I know about the credit card debt and the second mortgage you took out 2 years ago that you have already defaulted on. You are not looking for a partnership. You are looking for a bailout. You want me to pay for your lifestyle." Howard stood up so fast his chair fell over backward. His face was purple with rage now. "You ungrateful little mechanic," he spat. "You think you are better than us because you got lucky with some trucks? We are Whitmores. We have a legacy. We have a name. Our family has been respected in this community for 3 generations. Your legacy is debt," I said calmly, "and I am not paying for it." "Then get out!" Brooke screamed. Her composure was completely gone now. Her face was contorted with rage. "Get out of my parents' house and do not come back until you have that contract signed. You have until Friday, Nathan, or we are done." I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back with deliberate calm. I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out my phone, making a show of stopping the recording. "We are done now," I said. "And Brooke, do not bother packing your bags. I will have movers send your stuff here tomorrow. Since you love your parents so much, you can live with them. I am sure they have plenty of room, at least until the bank forecloses." I walked out the front door without looking back. I heard Brooke screaming something behind me, heard Patricia trying to calm her down, heard Howard yelling about respect and ingratitude. I just kept walking, got in my truck, started the engine, sat there for a moment in the driveway, collecting myself. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from the adrenaline of finally saying what I had been holding in, from the release of dropping that mask and being honest about what I thought of these people and their scheme. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through the back roads. I needed time to think, time to process what had just happened. Part of me felt sick about how everything had turned out. This was the woman I had planned to marry. These were the people I had expected to become my family, and now it was all burning down around me. But another part of me felt free, lighter than I had felt in months. I had not even realized how much weight I had been carrying, trying to make Brooke happy, trying to impress her parents, trying to live up to standards that were never really about me at all. The fallout was nuclear. Brooke blew up my phone for the next 24 hours straight. First it was threats, then begging, then bargaining. She called me 57 times. I counted. She left voicemails that swung wildly from furious to tearful to pleading. She told me I was throwing away true love over money. She told me I would never find anyone as beautiful as her. She told me I was going to die lonely and bitter with nothing but my trucks and my money to keep me warm at night. Then she told me she was pregnant. That one actually made me pause for about 30 seconds. Then I called Leah. Leah made a few calls and confirmed what I already suspected. Brooke could not possibly be pregnant by me. 3 years ago, after a long-term relationship ended badly, I had gotten a vasectomy. Brooke knew about it. We had discussed it. She had told me she did not want kids anyway. In her panic, she must have forgotten that little detail. Or she thought I would be too emotional to think clearly. Either way, the lie confirmed everything I needed to know about who she really was. Then came the smear campaign. By Saturday, Brooke had posted a long, tearful video on social media. She did not mention the shares. Oh no, that would make her look bad. Instead, she claimed I was emotionally abusive. She claimed I was controlling. She claimed I had cut her off from her family because I was threatened by their success and their social standing. She cried on camera. She talked about how scared she had been. She made herself sound like a victim escaping a monster. The video got traction. People I knew started texting me. Friends, acquaintances, business contacts. "Dude, is this true? Nathan, I had no idea you were like that. My wife saw the video. Are you okay?" A client actually called me Monday morning, asking if everything was all right because his wife had seen Brooke's video and was worried about doing business with someone who treated women that way. My reputation was taking hits. Years of building trust and goodwill were being eroded by a 3-minute video full of lies. I called Leah. "Release it." Leah posted the audio recording of the dinner conversation. She did not just post it. She sent it directly to every mutual friend Brooke and I had. She sent it to every person who had commented on Brooke's video. She had a legal statement drafted that we posted on my personal page with the audio attached. The caption was simple and direct. "I do not usually air dirty laundry publicly, but I will not be slandered. My ex-fiancée demanded 20% of my company as a condition of marriage to pay off her parents' gambling debts and mortgage default. When I refused, she tried to destroy my reputation. Here is the truth. Listen for yourself. The internet is a funny place. It loves a victim, but it loves justice even more." The audio was damning. You could clearly hear Howard admitting to the financial problems. You could hear Brooke screaming about the contract. You could hear the sheer entitlement dripping from their voices. Howard calling me an ungrateful little mechanic. Patricia talking about returns on investment, like their daughter was a stock portfolio. The tide turned so fast it gave me whiplash. The comments on Brooke's video went from "Stay Strong Queen" to "Gold Digger" exposed in about an hour. People started sharing the audio. It got picked up by a couple of those social media drama accounts. Screenshots started circulating. Brooke deleted her video. Then she deleted her entire social media presence. Gone overnight. By Tuesday, the whole thing had blown over for everyone except the Whitmore family. But I was not done. I had put deposits down on the wedding venue. $40,000, non-refundable. I had paid for the florist, the band, the catering, the photographer, the videographer, the fancy invitations that had already been sent out. All in, I was out about $70,000. I could have eaten the loss. I have the money, but it was the principle. These people had tried to rob me of 20% of my company. They had tried to manipulate me into signing away something I had spent 12 years building. They did not get to walk away without feeling some consequences. I sent an invoice to Howard Whitmore, not for the wedding costs. I knew he could not pay that. I sent an invoice for the consulting fee of reviewing their fraudulent contract, billed at my company's standard rate for legal consultation, plus the cost of the movers I had hired to pack up Brooke's belongings from my house and deliver them to her parents' driveway. He did not pay, obviously. I did not expect him to. But I did something better. I called the wedding venue. I explained that the wedding was off, but I had already paid for the space and the date. I asked if there was any way to salvage the situation. The event coordinator was sympathetic. She mentioned that they sometimes worked with charities who needed event space. Something clicked in my head. I made some calls. Found a local organization that helps veterans transition back to civilian life. Job training, housing assistance, that kind of thing. They were planning a fundraising gala, but had been struggling to find an affordable venue. I donated my wedding reservation to them. The catering, the band, the flowers, all of it, turned what was supposed to be my wedding day into a fundraising event for wounded veterans. The gala raised over $50,000 in one night. I stood on the stage where I was supposed to say I do, and instead, I handed a check to a Marine who had lost his leg overseas, a guy who had sacrificed more for this country than Howard Whitmore had ever sacrificed for anything. The Marine's name was Jeff. He shook my hand with a grip that could crush concrete and told me that the money was going to help him start a small engine repair business. He had been a mechanic in the Corps before his injury, said he missed working with his hands, said the hardest part of losing his leg was feeling useless. I told him I understood. I told him about starting my own business with nothing but determination and a maxed-out credit card. We talked for almost an hour after the event, swapping stories about the challenges of entrepreneurship and the satisfaction of building something real. Before I left, I gave him my business card, told him if he ever needed advice or connections or just someone to talk shop with, to give me a call. He has called twice since then, once to ask about insurance options for small businesses, once just to say thank you again. That felt better than any revenge ever could. Brooke tried to reach out one last time. About a month after everything went down, she sent a letter to my office. No return address. It was handwritten on expensive stationery. Nathan, I miss you. My parents were wrong. I see that now. I should never have listened to them. I should never have let them pressure me into asking for the shares. I am staying at a friend's place now. I left them. Can we just get together and talk? I promise no contracts, no lawyers, just us. I still love you. I know you still love me. I read the letter twice. I felt a twinge of something. Maybe sadness, maybe nostalgia. We did have good times. There were moments when I thought she was the one. Moments when I imagined building a life with her. But then I remembered the look in her eyes when she slapped that envelope on the table. The cold calculation. The way she had transformed from loving fiancé to corporate negotiator in an instant. The look of a woman who did not see a husband, but a bank account. I took a red marker from my desk drawer, wrote return to sender across the front of the envelope in big block letters, dropped it in the outgoing mail. Never heard from her directly again. But I heard plenty from other people. The grapevine kept me updated whether I wanted it or not. 3 months after our non-wedding, Howard lost the house. The bank finally foreclosed. A buddy of mine in real estate sent me pictures of the foreclosure auction listing. The house I had eaten Thanksgiving dinner in, the house where Howard had called me an ungrateful mechanic, sold for about 60% of what they owed on it. The bank took a loss. Howard and Patricia took a bigger one. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a town about 40 minutes away. Downsized everything. Sold the leased Mercedes. Sold Patricia's jewelry collection piece by piece on consignment. Sold the summer home at a loss just to settle the contractor lawsuits before they went to judgment. Howard tried to start a consulting business after that. Put up a website, printed business cards, the whole thing. Nobody hired him. His reputation in the business community was completely shot after the audio went viral. Turns out people do not want to work with a guy who calls mechanics ungrateful and talks about his daughter like she is livestock at auction. Last I heard, he was working part-time at a golf course, not playing golf. driving the beverage cart around, and picking up empty cups from the guys who actually have money. Brooke landed at a car dealership as a receptionist, entry-level position, the kind of job she used to mock when she talked about people who had not reached their potential. I know this because my parts supplier told me. He went in to buy a truck, and there she was behind the front desk, answering phones and scheduling service appointments. He said she looked tired, said she pretended not to recognize him, even though they had met at least 5 times at company events when she was still with me. He bought his truck somewhere else. Her social media came back eventually, but it is different now. No more designer handbags. No more vacation photos from expensive resorts. Just generic inspirational quotes and pictures of food from chain restaurants. The comments are mostly from her mom and a couple of old college friends. Meanwhile, things were moving fast on my end. Ironclad Fleet Services opened a new facility in Texas 6 months after the breakup. Major expansion into the Southwest market. We landed a 5-year contract with a regional transit authority that needed a reliable maintenance partner. The deal was worth more than everything I had made in my first 3 years of business combined. I flew down for the grand opening, cut the ribbon, shook hands with the local mayor who wanted photos for his re-election campaign, hired 22 new employees, most of them military veterans who knew how to work hard and show up on time. The ring I had bought for Brooke, returned it. Got about 60% back, which was better than I expected. Put the money toward a new alignment rack for the Texas shop. I started dating again about 4 months after everything went down. Her name is Claire, 4th grade teacher at an elementary school near my main facility. We met at a coffee shop when she was grading papers, and I was answering emails. She spilled her drink reaching for a napkin, and it landed on my laptop. She was mortified. I told her the laptop was 3 years old, and I needed an excuse to replace it anyway. She insisted on buying me a new coffee. I insisted on buying her dinner to make up for the stress I had clearly caused her. We went back and forth for 5 minutes until the barista told us to just exchange numbers already. First date, she showed up in jeans and a sweater, drove herself in an 8-year-old Honda Civic that she was genuinely proud of because she had paid it off 2 years early. When the check came, she pulled out her card before I could even reach for my wallet. I told her I was happy to pay. She told me she was happy to split it. We split it. She asked what I did for work. I told her I fixed trucks. She said that sounded important because people need their stuff moved around. That was it. No follow-up questions about revenue or expansion plans or equity structures. Last month, I took her to meet my parents. My mom pulled me aside in the kitchen and asked where I had been hiding this one. I told her I found her at a coffee shop covered in spilled latte. Mom said that was the most romantic thing she had ever heard. 2 weeks ago, I ran into someone unexpected. I was at a steakhouse downtown, the nice one I used to take Brooke to for special occasions. Claire and I were celebrating her getting tenure at her school. We had just ordered appetizers when I spotted a familiar face across the restaurant. Brooke, sitting at a table with some guy I did not recognize. He looked about 10 years older than her. Decent suit, nervous energy. Probably a first or second date based on the body language. She saw me at almost the same moment I saw her. Our eyes met across the room. I watched her face cycle through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. Shock, embarrassment, something that might have been regret. I just nodded. Polite, neutral, like she was a former coworker I vaguely remembered. Then I turned back to Claire and asked her about the field trip her class was taking next week. Something about a nature center and a bunch of 9-year-olds trying to catch frogs. I did not look at Brooke again for the rest of the meeting. Did not need to. Did not want to. When the check came, Claire tried to grab it. I was faster this time. Told her she could get the next one. We walked out of the restaurant holding hands. I opened her car door for her because that is just what you do. She kissed me before getting in and told me she had a really good time. I drove home that night thinking about how different everything was. A year ago, I was planning a wedding to a woman who saw me as a retirement fund. Now I was dating a teacher who got excited about frog-catching field trips and drove a paid-off Honda. Funny how things work out. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.